Welcome to The Parts Truth, the podcast where the nuts and bolts of the home service world come together. I am your host, Scott Pierson, and each week we dive into the real stories, the trends, the truths behind the trades. From the shifting tides of the economy and supply chain challenges to what homeowners need to know before making big investments in their homes. Whether you're in the industry or you're just trying to make smarter choices for your home, we're here to break it all down. No fluff, just facts. So grab your coffee, tighten your tool belt, and let's get into it. All right, welcome back. I am lucky to be joined today by Jennifer Manzo, HVA-Chick, an up-and-coming and probably one of the most well-heard voices in the trade today as far as it relates to women in the industry. Jennifer, welcome.
Thanks, Scott.
How are you today?
I'm doing great.
Let's dive into this. So I'm super curious, and I think our audience is too. History teacher to entrepreneur, you're an HVAC technician, you're a business owner, you're a trainer, you're a leading voice for women in the trade. How did this happen? How did we get here? What's your why and what's your story? Because I'm super curious. There's got to be a great story here.
There is. It's a great question. I have had a teaching background my whole adult life. I started right out of high school, 2 years early even. I graduated early and I went right into the workforce, into early childhood education. So I've been teaching kids my whole life. And during the pandemic, right before the pandemic hit, really, I decided to homeschool. And then I kind of had my fate sealed when it did hit because I already had my kids home and it was like, well, now I really can't decide against this. So during COVID, I was looking for my high school students for kind of some online virtual, vocational classes, something to give them some career preparedness. And everybody was stuck inside at that time. And I decided to try out a couple of different sites. I found SkillCat was one of them, the one that I ended up working for years after that. And I went through their course and I ended up EPA certified. And I'm like, well, now I have this. And I was just really entirely done with teaching. I was so burnt out. I had been doing it my whole life. And I really just wanted to look into something else. And my husband has been in HVAC for 28 years. So, I mean, I had an exposure and I had the whole weekends thing, wanting to spend time with him. So I'd go to work with him and kind of help him out and these kinds of things. And I guess I just kind of dove in feet first and started to research the industry while I was kind of learning and working in it as an apprentice. And I fell in absolute love with the community that there is capable of being within the HVAC space. And there weren't a lot of women, obviously. At that time, there were even less. I had absolutely zero female mentors, and I live in Maine. So I still to this day have not seen another female HVAC tech here. And I was just kind of at a point where it was time for a career shift. I was still homeschooling. I will always homeschool. I homeschool my kids and community kids. So I will always do that. But full circle moment, I guess I realized there was just a severe lack of training in this industry. And I was like, I know how to teach. I can teach. And I would just start learning by teaching. I would be like, okay, this person needs to know more about this. So do I. I might as well learn it so I can teach them. And that's really how it started. And it just boomed into this absolute craziness that it is today.
It's super interesting. Yeah, homeschool teacher to home services school teacher. The parallels there. I'm sure. Now, let me ask a funny question. Which is harder, homeschooling your kids and the community kids, or homeschooling HVAC techs in the field?
Absolutely HVAC techs all day long.
Fair enough. That's awesome. So let's unpack that for a second. So training and the gap there, you're trying to fill the void. Give me your take on the industry today. Is beyond training, where are we going, and what's the future look like as far as education in the trades? There's a big topic right now with younger technicians not having the tribal knowledge of the rapidly retiring older contingent. What do we got to do there? Is training the only answer, or are there other tools and resources that we can start to look at?
No, and I think that training honestly is a small part of that. It's definitely something that's missing. We're getting better at it. We're utilizing innovation and technology and tools that we have in order to get training out to people. The problem is the space that those people are in. So when you're working for a company, you rely on that company to provide your training for the most part. And if your company isn't providing training, or you want more training than what they're providing, you're stuck with going on YouTube or Instagram, and you never really know who to trust. You know, you don't know if the people you're watching are qualified to teach. Like when we're in an actual training, situation, we know that that person that's teaching us is qualified to teach us, that they understand the concepts and that they're teaching us to the industry standard. Whereas if we're searching online, we have no way of knowing that. So I think training, there is a big problem with training, but it's kind of its own problem. As far as where the industry is now and where it's headed in the future, we don't really have a structural way to impact, right? We have all of these places we have to impact. We have to find a way, but we also don't have a plan to do that. So we have a generational problem where we have, the old heads, as we call them affectionately, leaving the industry with or without maybe wanting to have passed on that knowledge that they have. But also we have the obsoleteness of that knowledge because of the technology that has come to pass. And I told a story today on the Encompass training, the monthly training you guys do that I teach, about if you are a technician that has 25 years at a company, you have seniority, you're expected to be a really good technician. But your knowledge base, if you're trying to say you and a 5-year in tech who knows nothing but the new technology, if you're both up for the same service manager position, the chances of you having 25 years in seniority at a more expensive rate, or the 25-year-old who's been in for 5 years, so he also has experience, but he has the experience that people are looking for with innovative tools and technology, and he's cheaper. The chances of you getting that position are so low. And that is kind of the systematic approach that we really need to address, because we can't just be going for somebody who's cheaper. It's a matter of the same outcome, but different companies have different whys. So like every company is going to choose that younger tech, but why? And so if we can get the older guys that maybe still have 5 or 10 years in, if we can get them on that same page, moving forward with innovation, changing out their tools for better technology. If you've got a guy who's only using analog gauges, and then you have this other guy who's got Measure Quick, and he's got, the job link probes, and he's got everything that he needs to walk away from that job and be able to tell what's going on with that system, and the other guy doesn't, we're doing the guy who has seniority a disservice. So it's like, it's not just that we're going to be out a whole bunch of techs really, really soon, which is a really big problem. It's a scary problem. And if you look at the statistics, it's terrifying. We have, 87% of the industry or whatever it is about to retire in the next 10 years. And we're only bringing them in at like a 10% rate. So we need to quadruple that really fast.
It's crazy. Yeah. I think the statistic I saw was like within the next 5 years, over 40% of that guard is gone.
Right.
Which, and the demand for HVAC services is not slowing down. It's actually increasing. I haven't thought about it in the context that you put it. I've always thought that, yes, the younger technician or the younger, savvy, technology adaptable technician is going to be cheaper from a rate standpoint. But I didn't think about it in the context of the new machines, because gosh, in 10 years alone, the machines have changed dramatically, right? We went from literally 20 years ago, 12 SEER, to now we're, half of the stuff sold to inverter, right?
Yeah.
So, new challenges.
And even in the last year, we've had such a shift in technology in the last year with the new refrigerant change. We've got we have technicians who are 5 years in who have never seen a refrigerant leak detector and now have to figure out how to wire in a refrigerant leak detector. Imagine how much harder that is for somebody who's been here 25 years and has never had to do that. And now they've got to come up with, a way to do that. And then the training isn't offered when we have a standards change through the EPA, we don't have a training change. We aren't then offered that same training in order to complete those tasks that they need us to complete now. So there's just gaps everywhere. It's not one gap. It's not one problem. It's so many problems that are planless for the future. Basically, the manufacturers have it down. The rest of us do not.
I think that's always been the case.
Yeah.
I saw a quote today. It was make it exist, then later make it great. I
Yeah.
think too often we get
Perfect.
stuck on we got to perfect the solution before we implement it. I think for our industry, we don't have the luxury of waiting. We just got to make the solution exist, and we'll figure out the rest of it as we go. With that being
Yeah.
said, though, are there little things in the industry today? Pull training out of it. I think that's a big picture thing that we've got to really rely on a lot of people to solve for.
Right.
Manufacturers, trainers like yourself, and ESCO and SkillCat, and all the ones that are focused on it 100% of the time. But the little things, I've been in this industry for 20 years, and information has always been poor to access.
Yeah.
If you wanted to access spec docs or part number nomenclature or things like that, for the last 20 years, it's been hidden behind a firewall at the distributor. If you're not a factory authorized dealer, you're
Yes.
typically not going to have access to the information that you need to be successful to service equipment in the field.
For
What
sure.
can we do to solve for that? I mean, that seems like one that's viva the information, let it go, free it.
Stop gatekeeping. Yeah. So proprietary companies and manufacturers have always been a problem when it comes to the contractor. So what I've done in HVA-Chicks Coalition is I 4 years ago started a tech support line, and it's a free tech support line, and it's 24 hours, and it's not just for HVA-Chicks Coalition techs. It's for any tech in the entire world. We have global callers to this line, and yeah, you're gonna get EPA standards because we're here in the U.S. and that's what we offer. But you can call from anywhere in the globe, and honestly, ours are stricter than anywhere really than the UK. If you really think about it, or Canada
Nice.
maybe. But yeah, so we've done the tech support thing. In doing our free tech support line, what we have found is that manufacturers, parts manufacturers, equipment manufacturers, distributors, they're way more likely to offer those kind of materials that we need if it is for a good cause. And so what we've done is, yes, made it free, and that's trouble on our part sometimes. But for 4 years, because of manufacturers wanting to help, we've managed to release a whole lot of that information that was once seen as so proprietary. So like now people can call us and we can, I can go into Bosch's, nomenclature one day, and the next day I'm in submittals from Daikin, and kind of merging all of the manufacturers, I think has been a really great step. But if we could do that on a wider scale, it's just like you said, viva la information, let us have it. We need to work on your equipment. We need to change your parts. We need to know how your, gas valve works as opposed to someone else's. Like, we can't just figure it out on our own all the time when you have that information handy. We've got to skip that step, put out the middleman. And I think it's, the reason it's been done this way for so long as distributors, right? It's making them so that they're not redundant. Like, distributors give us our equipment and our parts, but they otherwise, when it comes to information, would really be redundant if we didn't have to call them and ask them, what about this? What about that? So I think that's one big reason.
True,
It's
but
manufacturers making great relationships with distributors, right? So it leaves the rest of us kind of on the sideline. But that's one thing we could do, is just get the information out there. Yeah. Making things searchable too. Like, we have a lot of paperwork still, even though we're in the digital age. If we could make things like that searchable, it would be so much easier for contractors than having to call like manufacturer tech support, things like that.
yeah, that's for sure. That's actually, if you look at our Encompass and Partstown sites, that's
Yes,
part of our thesis is how do you put all the eggs in one basket from a part standpoint, true OEM, but be able to queue up the information quickly and easily. Because I
absolutely.
can tell
And
you,
then the manuals are all there.
I've run distribution businesses for almost 2 decades, and I actually don't want you calling for information. It
Right.
it bogs down the counter. It creates roadblocks to getting things done. Um,
Absolutely.
you know, we never staffed the counter for peak season.
Oh,
It
yeah.
wasn't staffed that way. So when peak season hits, there's a line out the door and you wonder why, there's popcorn and hot dogs there. It's just to distract you from the fact that we're slow, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, but the
yeah,
manufacturer doesn't exactly. And I think that's the disconnect, right? The manufacturer thinks this is what the distributors want. It's not what the distributors want. The distributors think this is what the contractors want. It's not what the contractors want. It's just a bunch of disconnects in between divisions rather than creating one industry that is for the same goal, I guess.
yeah. I think the current state is right before everybody checks in and realizes that's the case. We've got to accelerate the channel because, to your earlier point, too many technicians are retiring, too few are coming in. The technology is changing at such a rapid pace. Now the channel has to be faster, and the infighting of kind of that singularity between manufacturer, distributor, the whole fragmented nature of it has to somewhat come together to solve for it equally, or everybody's getting left behind. Somebody will solve for it.
Oh, for sure. I
I
hope we
would hate
do
to see
because we're
what's
the
left.
only trade in all of the trades that has this problem. There is no other trade in the world that has our particular problem of our technology outpacing us every single time, every time. You don't have roofers that are trying to learn how to use their tools. You don't have window guys that are trying to learn, windows just completely turned into different windows. They're all the same. Our equipment has changed just in the last year to something that we don't recognize anymore. And we don't have any training to get us there. And then also we're discounting 50% of the population. We're leaving women on the table. We're not marketing to them. We're not, putting things in place, benefits in place in our companies to really give them anything they would want to come and work this job for. And then now we're leaving Gen Z out on the table too. We're not targeting them either. So who are we going to have come and work for us? Pretty crazy.
That's worth unpacking right there. So how do we solve for getting more women in the trade, getting Gen Z to be excited about the trade and think this is sexy again, and come and do this? I mean, what's the answer to that? And maybe point the answer at manufacturers and distributors in the space. I think contractors are already starting to adopt that. Am I right or am I wrong?
Yeah, so we are. There's a lot of people and a lot of ideas and a lot of creativity involved in that. And a lot of it is like we have the tactical awards, right? The HVAC Tactical Awards. We have the HVAC Tactical magazine that I write the podcast circuit for. And companies like HVAC Tactical, their goal is to impact the younger guys, is to make this trade sexy again, is to show off the money, show off the, greatness of it. This is how you go home feeling like a superhero every day with a pocket full of money. And that is how we impact the younger generations. That's a great way to do it. The other way is to start earlier. We have to start earlier. We can't start telling, high school students, seniors and juniors that it is now okay for you to start thinking about a trade rather than college, because their whole lives they've been pushed into college. So if we start that in elementary school, if we start that in middle school, that's where we have to systematically change. We can't keep up with the exact same thing we've been doing for the past 200 years, because that is what has caused this. We've got to go earlier. We've got to. Grit Foundation is a great one. HVAC School and SkillCap partnered together to make Grit Foundation. And that is a camp that is held at a contractor's base. Basically, it's all over the country. Contractors host them, and they have, coaches, and they have children who come in and try 5 different trades all in one camp day or a couple of camp days. And targeting those younger children is giving us a way better chance at getting those high schoolers when they're high schoolers, instead of targeting them in high school and hoping in the next year they change their mind about wanting to go how to live the college life or go into the workforce. So that's a huge one. The other one is obviously to target women. We don't want to target women. You can't say, hey, women, come work here. That's crazy. People would never want to go to a place that was like, hey, women, we finally accept you. That would just be completely counterintuitive to what we're trying to do. So it's a very, very hard thing to do for manufacturers, for distributors, for contracting companies. It's impossible almost. So that what we have to do instead is, instead of outwardly saying something, instead of advertising something to women, we have to change our company. We have to change the culture. We have to make sure that we aren't hiring men who we wouldn't want left alone with a woman. If we're going to then also hire women, we can't make our benefits package targeted at men who have a woman at home to take care of their children. When we're thinking about benefits, we need to think about childcare. We need to think about better health insurance, better dental, better vision. These are the things women need in order to work for you because they can get it in the healthcare field. They can get it in the education field. They can't get it here. So changing your company from the ground up is the first step to even thinking about hiring women. And I think that that is where a lot of contractors and a lot of manufacturers just don't want to go there, and they have to. So hopefully a bunch of them choose to very, very soon, because we have a whole half a population ready to make the money, ready to do the hands-on work, ready to get dirty. None of us are afraid of it. We just need someone to want us.
That's super insightful on both of those topics, the attracting women to the field and the Gen Z, making it sexy again for everybody to think it's an attractive occupation. Yeah. So I have a nephew. He's 20, I think 4 now. And about 6 years ago, I tried to convince him to get in an HVAC, and he started at trade school. And it wasn't like a month in that he was sitting beside some older guys that were trying to get recertified for something. And he came and he's like, I don't want to be in this industry because I don't want to be one of these old guys that's just constantly complaining about how much my knees hurt and how poor I am. And he's like, I'm going to go be a lineman in the electrical world. I was like, okay, fair enough. You're still in the trades and you might fall down from that pole, but you're going to make a lot of good money in the process. But yeah, we're on the precipice of this big shift, right? Of the old guard leaving, but then we're going to have a giant culture shift between those guys and what's coming in, especially if we attract Gen Z and attract women to the trades. It's going to be a different world. Am I wrong?
Absolutely. And it's going to be in so many ways that nobody's thinking about now. And so we're not ready for this. We're not even remotely ready for this. So one big thing is, my son did the same thing. My son was so sick of HVAC by the time he became an adult. He was like, don't even look at me with that. He went and climbed towers for a living. He's a tower climber. It's what he does. And I'm very proud of him, but I would have loved to have him in HVAC. And so I think all the time, what could I have done? What could I have done for this to not be an awful thing he was staring in the face, and instead make it something he was excited about? And I don't think I could have as a parent, because both of his parents were in HVAC. He didn't have any way to get away from it. But in general, we have choices, right? And so nobody's going to like this at all, but we have to change. We have to be ready for it to change organically, because it's going to. Gen Z is post-COVID world. They're post-COVID kids. They're not going to accept 80 hours a week working. They're not going to accept low wages when they can go and work at McDonald's for more money. They're not going to accept the federal minimum wage, which is still $7.25 an hour. And there are companies out there that are actually paying kids $7.25 an hour to work in HVAC. You can't expect them to agree to it, because the difference between Zennials and Millennials and Gen Z is that they refuse to be abused. They refuse to be bullied. They make choices based on their own well-being rather than the well-being of the greater good. We were taught to be very obedient in being raised. We were taught that our elders and the people that we work for, our bosses and our parents and all the adults in our lives, were those to be listened to and obeyed. And that transferred into our work life as adults. We are able to obey. Gen Z isn't. They were born a whole different animal. They were raised a whole different animal, and they've been through like 30 mass extinction events in their very young lives. There are bad things going on in the world that they're dealing with, and that trauma is just enough for them to say, no, I'm not going to work 80 hours a week for you. No, I'm not going to stay when my kid has a dance recital. I'm not going to stay. I'm not going to work out of town for $50, a week per diem. I'm not going to do it. And they refuse. That's where they're different from us. That's what the industry's not ready for. Because what will end up happening is they will force companies to hire more of them. So if you have one guy that's requiring $25 an hour, which in my humble opinion, no person should be doing HVAC for less than that if they're licensed and if they have at least 1 year of experience. So if they're working for $25 an hour, but they'll only work 40 hours a week or 45 hours a week, maybe 50 if you're lucky, and you're used to having a 3-guy shop and handling, 120 hours per week with 3 guys, you're now going to have to hire 6 guys to handle that 120 hours a week. It's just not going to work out the way it always has. They're going to be forcing these companies to do a whole lot more. And those companies have to be ready to do more because it will literally be that or don't have someone work for you. These kids do not care. They're scary.
Yeah, but if you take that, I mean, I actually enjoyed the thought, because if you think about that same math that you just kind of unpacked there, you know, if you went to college, which we're telling them now not to go to college, right? Go to trade school. You'd graduate and you'd work a 40-hour week and you'd get paid probably more than $25 an hour. If you worked an 80-hour week and worked on like Wall Street, you'd make tons of money, right? But
Absolutely.
the concept is still just math there. So yeah, if we want to make it an attractive occupation, then it also has to rival what has traditionally been there for those white collar roles in this blue collar market.
Absolutely. And other trades, right? Because again, other trades are easier on the brain and they're easier on the body. Our trade is horrible on the brain and it's terrifying on the body. And those guys that are sitting there complaining that, your nephew thought we're old heads, we're probably only 40, it's a detrimental trade. So we've got to make it detrimental money. It's like the coal mines, right? Back in the day, the coal mines, the reason that the guys went to the coal mines wasn't because it was their only choice. It was because it was the only choice where they could support their families for a living wage. If HVAC, our thing that we've always dragged techs in with is the money. We've always made more money than every other trade because there's more going on over here. That hasn't happened for the last 5 years. The last 5 years, that has completely declined. We are still paying these techs the same amount as we were when it was R22 for them to go and work on 454B. And it's just not the same. And they're not offered training. They have no time with their families. The divorce rate is masterful. We've got to change things if we want them to stay, and we've got to change them big time if we want them to come, for sure.
That's cool. So I've always been on the other side of the counter, but now I'm using everything you just said to blame my gray hair on the industry and not necessarily my genetics. So we're good. All right, we're running up on time, but I want to do some rapid questions here. All right, Jennifer. True or false? OEM parts are better than generic parts.
True.
Great answer. True or false? It's hard to get in touch with HVA-Chicks Coalition training.
False.
Okay. How would I, if I were listening, get in touch with your tech service line or potentially access your trainings? I need both answers.
Absolutely. HVAChicks.com has all of our sign-up forms. You don't have to sign up. You can even skip the sign-up by going to the HVA-Chicks Coalition group on Facebook and just joining. That's all you have to do. You can message me anywhere at HVAChicks Jennifer, and my email is jennifer@hvachicks.org. So we are very accessible. You don't have to do anything you don't want to do other than come and join us. We have free training every Saturday, and our tech support line is 24 hours for literal anyone, and it is 856-390-4055. Just make sure that you're a licensed tech, because that's all we require.
Yes. We require that too. Licensed technicians only.
Yes.
One of the things that we get hit with a lot, because we're an e-com site, is how do we monitor that? And we do a lot of IP tracking and do a lot with pricing to discourage things. But yeah, do quality work, but get trained up to do it first. That's my big push. Anything you want to leave the group with today, Jennifer?
Just that you have a different demographic of listener than I usually get in front of. And I just want to stress that there are so many things that distributors, that manufacturers, that even contractors can do in order to kind of put in the work for the industry. Like, it's not all about coming here and just doing our job and going home at night and having our paycheck. There's a lot of responsibility on every single one of us here to save our trade, because in 15 years, we may not have one. And then we're not going to have AC and we're not going to have heating. So we really need to do something about this. If you have the ability to use your voice or use your standing as a manufacturer or distributor to, invite things into your company, invite social media into your company, invite things like TikTok and, even just YouTube. Like, if you have a chance to document all of the things that you would like people to come and work for you to do, make sure you do it. Use social media as a tool, and also show up at all of the events. We have the US Heat Pump Summit coming up in November, and it's really, really important that we turn the world into a electrified only situation someday. So this is where it starts. Go to the events. That's all I'll leave you with.
Cool. Well, thank you. Pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you, Scott.
All right. Take care.